I never thought a trip to Disneyland could shatter a family bond, but as I stared at that gleaming RV in my dad's driveway, I felt the sting of betrayal. Between my financial struggles and Karen's manipulative ways, the happiest place on earth was about to turn into ground zero for our family drama. Here's how it all went down. I had always been the apple of my father's eye. At 25, with flowing raven black hair and hazel eyes that always seemed to harbor a hidden tale, I prided myself on my independence. Living in the city since 19 had given me resilience, but the recent economic downturn had hit me hard, threatening my autonomy. Desperate, I reached out to the one constant pillar in my life, my dad. My dad was a commanding figure, standing tall with his distinguished salt and pepper hair and compassionate blue eyes. There was a blend of strictness and tenderness in him. Yet since the loss of my mother 5 years ago, there was a void in him which he seemed to be trying to fill. Then there was Karen, a woman in her 40s with shimmering platinum blonde hair and a love for luxury. Her green eyes always twinkled with a hint of mischief and ambition. She brought along 2 children from her previous marriage, a 10-year-old boy engrossed in video games and a bubbly 8-year-old girl with an insatiable love for all things Disney. From the get-go, I was wary of Karen's intentions with my father. She seemed to have a talent for sidelining me, making choices that perpetually made me feel like a stranger in my own home. Despite this, I felt an unspoken obligation to watch over my dad, to stand up against Karen's subtle machinations. Our family home was nestled in a picturesque neighborhood, complete with neat houses, pristine lawns, and the playful laughter of children echoing down the streets. It was a stark contrast to the confines of my city apartment, but it was still home to me. On this fateful day, I had come over to discuss my financial woes with my dad. Little did I know that I would be greeted by an RV, hinting at a Disneyland adventure and an impending whirlwind of emotions. The hum of my car's engine faded as I pulled into the picturesque suburban lane leading to my dad's house. But the sight that greeted me was entirely unexpected. An imposing white RV, as colossal as my astonishment, brandishing the words Disneyland Adventure in audacious, gleaming letters. My heart didn't just sink, it plummeted. The sun, mercilessly bright, cast an almost mocking glow on the RV. The sharp pangs of jealousy, frustration, and betrayal bit into me. Asterisk. Could he really have chosen this over me? Before I had a moment to process my emotions or the gravity of the situation, the house's door thrust open with urgency. Like a scene out of a movie, there was my father, arm in arm with Karen, his new wife, and trailing behind them, her 2 over-energetic kids. The children, lost in a world of gaiety, donned those unmistakably large Mickey Mouse ears, their laughter echoing a little too loudly for my taste. They were a picture of pure, unadulterated joy, and the cruel irony was that it mirrored the exact antithesis of my emotional state. Drawing a shaky breath to muster some courage, I began my approach, each step heavier than the last. "Dad!" My voice quivered, revealing the tempest of emotions I was trying so hard to mask. "How can you take them to Disneyland when I'm here, struggling, waiting for you to make good on your promise about my rent?" Karen, never one to let an opportunity slip to assert her dominance, retorted with disdain dripping from every word. "They deserve a break, a little fun. Perhaps you should be more adept at handling your own mess." The glint in her eyes was all too familiar. It was the same gleam I had seen during every one of our confrontations. It screamed of her victory and my apparent defeat, but I wasn't about to back down. Biting my lip to prevent the impending flood of tears, I shot back. "This isn't about a frivolous trip to Disneyland, Karen. It's about trust, promises, and principles. I'm drowning out here, and he said he'd be there." With a smug smirk, she readjusted her sun hat, as if preparing for battle. "Your sense of entitlement is astonishing. Why should it be our burden to rescue you?" The fire in my eyes remained undimmed as I faced Karen squarely. "This isn't just about feeling entitled. It's about basic fairness. You're okay with him sidelining his own daughter in favor of them?" I gestured, my arm sweeping dramatically towards her kids, who, in their bubble of childhood innocence, played gleefully with their Disney toys, blissfully unaware of the adult tension around them. Seeing the situation escalate, my dad, always the voice of reason in our family, stepped in, positioning himself between the two of us. The deep creases of concern etched on his forehead were telling. "There has to be a way we can find some middle ground here," he began, his tone measured. "Let's sit down and hash this out, without hurling accusations." Taking a moment to collect myself, I nodded, the fiery heat of my anger cooling down to a simmer. "All I want, Dad, is for you to understand the hurt I feel when it seems like you're putting them before me." We settled into the living room, the atmosphere thick with tension but also a budding hope for resolution. My dad spoke first. "What if I set up a repayment plan for your rent over the next few months?" I realized that this trip was ill-timed and I should have communicated better. I considered his proposition. "That would help, Dad. But beyond the money, I want us to rebuild our relationship. I don't want to feel like an outsider." Karen, for the first time showing a hint of softness in her demeanor, spoke up, albeit begrudgingly. maybe we could set up family days where it's just you, your dad, and your siblings. It's clear you all need it. Dad nodded in agreement. That sounds like a plan. We need to foster understanding and reconnect, Karen added with a hint of sarcasm that couldn't quite be masked. Just don't expect those days to be funded by my wallet. She then made her way to the RV, guiding her kids along. As the engine's roar faded, my dad and I, in the waning light of the day, seemed to have found a pathway to mend the rift. The Disneyland escapade, though chaotic, served as a turning point. While challenges remained, it laid the groundwork for building bridges and restoring lost connections. Wow, just listen to this story and I'm blown away. The dynamics, the tension, felt like I was right there in the driveway with them. Karen, though, yikes. So, there's me, a total Chicago city girl, and Tom, this chill dude from Georgia. Who'd have thought we'd end up together? But one night, I made a dumb joke at a work thing, and man, did things get complicated. Here's how it all went down. So, Tom and I were what you'd call the classic case of opposites attracting. Picture this, a quiet, nature-loving guy from a tranquil Georgian town colliding with a bustling, always-in-charge city gal from Chicago. Yep, that's us. Tom grew up surrounded by books and the hum of nature. His childhood was all about exploring vast open spaces, curling up with a good book borrowed from his librarian mom, or listening to tales of history from his dad. The guy's a genius, honestly. I always joke that he can design an entire skyscraper during one of his introspective moments. But it's not far from the truth. He's an architectural whiz, drawing inspiration from the nature he so loves. Then there's me, Jane, born amidst the cacophony of Chicago, jostling for space and attention amidst a horde of siblings. Maybe that's why I've always had this instinct to lead, to organize, to be heard. I've always had my eyes set on the corporate skyline, dreaming of reaching its pinnacle. Our worlds, they crashed into each other in college. Picture Tom, lost in a medieval architecture book, and then there's me, swamped with my business management notes. Fate had its funny way when Tom spilled coffee all over my precious notes. What started as an amusing, well, not so much for me at that moment, encounter turned into late-night debates, shared dreams, and before we knew it, a love story that feels straight out of a rom-com. Fast forward through the whirlwind romance, we've now been navigating the hustle and bustle of New York life for years, juggling our jobs in the same multinational corporation. Married for 15 years, parents to 2 amazing kids, and an ever-energetic dog, Muffin. Our home? Well, it's a beautiful mess. Half of it screams Jane with everything in meticulous order, and the other half, Tom's haven, scattered with blueprints, books, and his ever-evolving ideas. So, when I recently got that promotion, our yin-yang dynamic took another interesting turn. Tom, with his quiet support, was thrilled for me, yet I could sense his unease about the spotlight this might throw on our personal dynamics, especially in a place where we both worked. And this brings us back to that work gala, where amidst the glitter and chatter, I tried to paint a playful picture of our life at home, hoping to lighten the mood and perhaps make Tom feel more at ease. About a month ago, I landed an unexpected promotion at work. Now I'm technically in a position higher than my husband Tom. We work at the same place, but now, if you look at the company chart, my name's a bit higher than his. Every time I bring it up, Tom flashes his genuine smile, his eyes twinkling, and says, "I always knew you were going places, babe." But deep down, I sometimes wonder if he's a tad uncomfortable with the whole situation. Last night, we had this grand work gala, you know, one of those events to pretend we're all one big happy family outside of work hours. Initially, Tom was all, "Do I have to go? I think I feel a migraine coming." Classic Tom. He's more of a stay-at-home and chill with a movie kind of guy, but then I nudged, "Come on, if you bail on me, folks will start gossiping that you're sulking about my promotion." After some playful pouting, he gave in, all right, but if anyone asks, I'm just there as your arm candy." The evening rolled out pretty smoothly. I got lost in a sea of conversations, clinking glasses, and occasional dancing. Tom, true to his word, stood by my side for a while, made small talk with a few folks, then found a comfy corner to just relax. Enter Sarah, the undeniable drama magnet of our floor, with eyelashes so long they could cause a mini tornado with every blink. With a flourish, she sailed in, wineglass in hand, like she was auditioning for a Hollywood movie about high society affairs. She did her usual predatory scan of the room before zooming in on me with a predatory glint. "So," she purred dramatically, red lips curving in a smirk. "Where is Tom? In hiding? Perhaps he's become a monk and taken a vow of solitude." Laughing, I pointed towards a dimly lit corner. "Ah, Sarah, always the theatrical. No, he's right over there, cloaked in mystery, probably contemplating the universe and the meaning of hors d'oeuvres." She leaned in, voice dripping with exaggerated intrigue. "Is Mr. Intense the same brooding enigma at home too?" I chuckled, playing along. Oh, Sarah, if walls could talk. At home, Mr. Thoughtful becomes Mr. Tornado, treating our floor like it's the aftermath of a clearance sale. And you wouldn't believe how he morphs into this grumpy grandpa when the neighbor's kids even think about stepping on our lawn. Picture it. There he stands, shaking his fist, yelling, "Kids, stay off my sacred grass!" It's side-splittingly comical. Sarah, already in splits, added, "Who knew? Tom, a man of countless layers, like an onion or a very intricate cake." Amid the low lighting and clinking glasses, I found myself weaving tales for an ever-growing audience. "Picture this," I said, adding a conspiratorial whisper for dramatic flair. "We're in a jungle so wild even Tarzan would need a map, trying to cross this bridge that looked like it had survived a few world wars." Eyes wide, I added, "And Dave, our very own action hero, right? He suddenly transformed into jelly. He was holding onto that bridge as if it held the secret to eternal youth, and those knees of his, they weren't just shaking, they were dancing the salsa." Jenna, nearly spitting her drink, exclaimed, "Stop! Our macho man Dave, petrified of a little old bridge?" I feigned a sigh. "Oh, Jenna, if only you knew. Sometimes I feel like I'm running a daycare, always reminding him to pick up after himself and eat his greens." Amidst the joviality, the door swung open, revealing Dave, my husband. He looked sharp in his usual attire, but it wasn't his clothes that got everyone's attention. It was the distinct look in his eyes, a mix of surprise and mild annoyance. That, and the subtle clench of his jaw, immediately told me he'd heard more than he should have. "Hey, everyone," he greeted, though his eyes were fixed on me. "Sounds like there's a party in here. Mind if I join?" Stammering, I tried to save face. Of course, we were just having a lighthearted chat, nothing serious. Our departure from the party was, to put it mildly, awkward. The car ride home had a thickness in the air, a palpable tension that seemed to drown out the soft hum of the radio in the background. Breaking the silence, I tried, "Dave, is everything all right?" He took a moment before replying, his voice low and strained. "I just didn't expect you to share our private moments in front of everyone, especially colleagues." I could feel a familiar defensiveness rising within me. "Dave, you always hang back, not engaging with anyone. It's like you deliberately avoid conversations." He sighed, frustration evident in his posture. "It's not about my introversion or how I handle social settings, it's about boundaries." Trying to redirect the blame, I shot back, "This wouldn't have been a problem if you weren't always so distant. Plus, it feels like you've been on edge since my promotion." His gaze intensified. "So you think this is about your job? Really?" The rest of the ride was a silent movie of city lights, with both of us lost in our thoughts. The chill from the outside seeped in, making the atmosphere inside the car even colder. Once home, I couldn't help but spill my frustrations to my sister over text. She, with her knack for blunt truths, replied, "Sis, you might have crossed a line tonight. Everyone has a right to their personal stories." Staring at her message, I wondered, am I the jerk? The cool breeze on that fateful evening sent a chill down my spine, a subtle reminder of the storm brewing inside me. I had let slip some words, thoughtless and mean, especially the one about the fear of heights. I still can't believe I'd brought it up, especially since my husband, with all his courage, had faced his acrophobia head-on by crossing that rope bridge, all for me. The next morning, as I was sipping my coffee, the ping of my phone brought me back from my thoughts. It was a barrage of comments, some empathetic, some not so much, each one forcing me to introspect, to dive deep into the recent changes in my behavior. I took a deep breath and approached my husband. "Hey," I began hesitantly, meeting his patient eyes. I'm really sorry about last night, about everything I said, especially about bringing up your fear of heights and, well, how I've been since the promotion." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "I never should have accused you of being jealous, or shared personal stories without your consent. Both were wrong." He looked at me, a soft smile playing on his lips. "You know," he started, "I had already forgiven you. I always knew those words weren't truly you, but a momentary lapse. I'm not blameless either. I said things in anger when we got home." His confession took me by surprise. "I want us to move past this," he continued, "to learn and grow from it. Every time I think about that night, a twinge of regret still courses through me. But we've been mending and growing together. My husband, the gem that he is, has been so supportive. At work, he never hesitates to mingle with our colleagues. Just yesterday, I overheard him laughing and recounting the rope bridge adventure to one of them, making everyone in the room burst into laughter. It warmed my heart to see him so comfortable, sharing our story. And so, life moves on, with its ups and downs. But through it all, love and understanding remain our constant. We all have our unique ways of socializing and processing situations, and it's essential for extroverts to remember that introverts may value their privacy more. Mutual respect goes a long way in bridging any communication gap. Little did I know that a seemingly innocent bag of cookies would ignite a tumultuous storm in my household. My mother, a virtuoso in the theater of narcissism, had always been a catalyst for chaos, but this time, her antics would push our family to the brink. As we stood on the precipice of disaster, I couldn't have fathomed how far-reaching the consequences of those cookies would be. Here's how it all went down. You wouldn't believe the level of drama that erupted in my household over a simple bag of cookies. To give you a background, my mother has an Oscar-worthy role in the grand theater of narcissism. Her antics have scarred both my brother and me, leaving psychological wounds that might never heal. Now picture this. Jason, my brother's boyfriend, had just returned from an extravagant European adventure. He's not just your run-of-the-mill cook. He's a culinary virtuoso with a penchant for crafting sweet pastries that could make angels weep with joy. But destiny couldn't resist throwing a wicked twist into this tale. Jason contracted an illness that made the common cold look like a mere inconvenience. It was the kind of ailment that whispered sinister threats of contagion. So, one fateful evening, as he attempted to share the divine taste of his travels with us, a cataclysmic cough erupted, showering the array of heavenly cookies with potential doom. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he wisely set them aside, destined for the trash bin. But alas, our serene tableau of cookies and contagion was soon shattered. The next morning, I was drawn into a vortex of melodrama that would have left Shakespeare himself envious. From the depths of our abode, I heard a voice, dripping with melodramatic dismay that sent shivers racing down my spine. "What's this, dear? Exquisite cookies being thrown away in my asterisk house?" My mother bellowed, her voice a symphony of greed and defiance. Her eyes gleamed with the manic gleam of a treasure hunter who had just unearthed untold riches. My voice of reason fell on deaf ears as I tried to alert her to the potential danger. "Mom, Jason coughed on them. They might not be safe." Her retort was a scoff that could have curdled cream. "Nonsense! In my day, we didn't waste food because of a little cough. A bit of germs never hurt anyone." With a grandiose sweep of her hand, she declared, "My house! My property!" And like a regal monarch laying claim to her dominion, she sauntered off, cookies in tow, as if she had just claimed the crown jewels of confectionery in the name of her ego. Oh, but the drama was far from over. My mother's dramatic flair had a way of escalating situations into full-blown soap opera territory. As I desperately tried to reason with her about the potential risks of those cough-ridden cookies, she turned to me, her eyes narrowing in condescension. "Darling," she said with a theatrical sigh, "you simply lack the sophistication to appreciate these culinary masterpieces. You see, these cookies have been touched by the hands of Europe's finest pastry chefs. A mere cough is nothing in the face of such artistry." My brother couldn't help but interject, his voice laced with exasperation. "Mom, it's not about appreciation, it's about health. Jason is genuinely sick, and the last thing we want is to make it worse." With a dismissive wave of her hand, she retorted, "Oh, you young ones and your exaggerated concerns. In my time, we'd eat cookies even if they fell on the floor, and we turned out just fine." Jason, who had been silently observing this melodrama, finally chimed in, his patience wearing thin. "Fine, if you're so confident, go ahead. Eat them yourself. But if you get sick, don't say I didn't warn you." My mother, undeterred and unwavering in her delusion, replied with an exaggerated flourish. "Well, I shall risk it for the sake of art and culture," she declared, strutting off like a queen who had just claimed her throne, relocating the cookies to the basement. It was a symphony of absurdity, a crescendo of stubbornness, and a tragic comedy all rolled into one. The cookies, once a symbol of indulgence, had now become a representation of my mother's unyielding narcissism, leaving us to wonder whether this drama would ever reach its climactic conclusion. You might wonder, why all this fuss about a bag of cookies? Well, it wasn't about the cookies. It was about power, control, domination. The basement was her lair, a place where she stashed away her victories, trophies of her dominance. Each item a symbol of a battle won against us. In the end, those cookies became a potent symbol in our household, not of delicious European adventures, but of the lengths a person would go to assert dominance, to undermine, and to control. Till today, whenever my brother and I catch a whiff of cookies, it isn't the sweetness we recall, but the bitter taste of power play and narcissism. And in a strange, twisted way, that bag of cookies was the turning point. My mother's realization and ours that the pain she inflicted wasn't always in grand gestures, but sometimes in the pettiest of actions. The table in the basement had become an unspoken exchange point in our house, a sort of free cycle for unwanted items, leftovers, and odds and ends that someone else might find useful. Mom had made it clear. Anything she didn't want, like, or need was placed on that table for me to share with my daughter, Maddie. I, in my naivety, never imagined the jeopardy lurking there. On the first day, I picked up a solitary cookie and split it with Maddie. Within hours, she began coughing. Not the usual tickle, but something deeper, raspier. Brushing it off, I assumed it was due to some accumulated dust mites and promptly washed her sheets. Day 2. The cookies seemed too tempting, so I fetched 2-1 for each of us. Maddie's cough persisted and became worse. That evening, as I cleared my throat, a regular habit from vaping, I didn't think much of it. But by the third day, things took a dark turn. My throat felt like sandpaper. Panic settled in as I began piecing together the grim puzzle. Maddie's worsening cough, my scratchy throat, it all linked back to those cookies. A knock on my door startled me. It was Jason, my brother's boyfriend. His pale face conveyed everything, even before he opened his mouth. "Did you eat the cookies from downstairs?" I hesitated, my mind racing. Did I inadvertently consume something meant for someone else? "I had one," I mumbled. "That's why you and Maddie are sick," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "Your mother raided our game room. Those cookies were from our trash. I had coughed on them. I was going to toss them out." I felt the ground shift beneath me. Anger bubbled inside. "Are you serious? She got us sick because of her petty pilfering?" He nodded grimly. "Yep, she rummaged through our stuff." The confrontation with my mother was explosive. My anger at her carelessness and my worry for Maddie came crashing down. "You need to buy medication for Maddie and me," I said, trying to hold my fury in check. "This is because of your actions." She sneered back, eyes blazing. "You don't demand me to do anything. They should have disposed of those cookies properly." "They did, but you decided to play garbage collector," I retorted, my voice dripping with contempt. "I expect some kind of remedy from you since you caused all this." In the midst of this tempestuous family drama, I couldn't help but feel a pang of déjà vu. Every time I recall that episode, I'm reminded of how boundaries can be violated, not just by strangers, but by those closest to us. A simple act of taking what isn't yours can lead to such unforeseen consequences. Always ask, always verify, and always respect boundaries. This was a lesson etched into my psyche. The price, my daughters, and my health. As I ventured out of my room, determined to help Maddie in any way I couldn't escape the tension that hung in the air like an impending storm. She had been coughing persistently, and the honey-infused water was a small but comforting gesture to soothe her throat. A feeble attempt to combat the chaos that had engulfed our household. But little did I know, my weakened state and my daughter's condition were just a prelude to the explosive confrontation that was unfurling in the next room. Without a moment's hesitation, I instructed my friend on the phone to start a screen recording. Something colossal was about to unfold, and I wanted every damning detail captured as evidence. As I stepped into the room, the scene before me was a whirlwind of emotions. Jason, his eyes ablaze with fiery determination, had taken it upon himself to confront my mother against my brother's counsel. His accusations, sharp as daggers, sliced through the air, and my heart raced as I tried to fathom the magnitude of the situation. Jason, his voice laced with frustration, told my mother, "You need to understand the gravity of your actions. You've put them both at risk by taking those cookies." My mother, refusing to yield an inch, shot back, "I won't be dictated to in my own home. I'll do as I please." My brother, caught in the crossfire, pleaded, "Mom, this isn't just about cookies. It's about the health of your own children," she retorted, her words dripping with defiance. "You're all overreacting. A little cough won't hurt anyone." I watched, torn between my desire to protect my daughter and the anguish of witnessing my family torn apart. The tempest raged on, and it seemed as though the bonds of family were unraveling before my very eyes, torn apart by stubbornness and pride. In a moment of desperation and fury, I interjected, my voice quivering with frustration. "It's your fault that Maddie and I got sick." I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. I needed her to understand the gravity of her actions. Jason seized upon my words, emphasizing the point with a ferocity that sent shivers down my spine. "Exactly! You touched property that was not yours and got them both sick. I have no idea how that sickness will affect that child, and because of your negligence, I can call CPS." His threat hung in the air like a thundercloud, casting a pall over the room. I knew Jason well enough to understand that he wouldn't use the Child Protective Services as a means to separate Maddie and me, but as a desperate attempt to distance us from my mother, to protect us from her recklessness. My brother, caught in the crossfire, backed our mother into a room, creating a temporary barrier. I positioned myself at the entrance, determined to keep Jason from charging into the room and escalating the situation further. I knew that things had spiraled out of control, and any hope of resolution was slipping away, replaced by a storm of anger, recrimination, and fear. In that moment, I was the thin line of defense, trying to maintain some semblance of order in a world gone mad. The flu medication I took had shrouded my senses during that intense confrontation, left me with only fragmented memories of the heated exchange. However, there were certain moments that had etched themselves into my consciousness, like the cruel jabs my mother had thrown at my brother, telling him to find someone different to date. Those words cut deep, revealing the depths of her disregard for his choices and the extent to which she would go to maintain control. Once the argument had somewhat subsided, I was summoned into the room. In the aftermath, I couldn't bring myself to speak to her. I accepted the cough medication silently and retreated to my room, where my daughter thankfully slept peacefully, free from the relentless coughing that had plagued her earlier. The following morning, Maddie and I found ourselves huddled in the bathroom with the shower on full blast, filling the room with steam. It was a makeshift treatment, an attempt to ease our respiratory discomfort. The standoff between my mother and Jason continued unabated. She clung to her ultimatum. If he didn't leave, she would. But in my tired and sickly state, her threats held less power over me. I knew I had options, even though it meant leaving my brother in a precarious position. Jason had made arrangements to move in with my grandmother and was prepared to pay rent to ensure we had a safe haven. In the end, sickness had invaded not only our bodies but our family bonds, and as I drifted into a fitful sleep, I couldn't help but wonder whether the path ahead would lead to healing or further turmoil. Absolutely, it's a tough pill to swallow, but sometimes for the sake of one's own mental well-being, it's necessary to distance oneself from toxic individuals, even if they are family. Blood ties can make us feel obligated to endure negativity, but at the end of the day, preserving one's peace and health should be the top priority. Surrounding oneself with supportive and uplifting individuals can make all the difference in one's life journey. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.